Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC 277 is almost here, so I wanted to make a video going through the pay-per-view main card, briefly talking about each fight on the main card, and then at the end of the video, I am going to grade UFC 277. I've done this for the last couple of pay-per-views. I'm going to continue to make these videos, but before I even get into grading UFC 277, look up the card and comment down below and let me know what grade you would give UFC 277 as it sits right now. And also, guys, in the next couple days, I will be putting out a bunch of prediction videos for UFC 277, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss those videos. So first off, in the main event of UFC 277, we have Julianna Pena versus Amanda Nunes 2. Julianna Pena is defending her women's bantamweight title that she took off of Amanda Nunes at UFC 269. Is this main event worthy? Now, I think this is a very compelling fight. Anytime you have a dominant champion, Amanda Nunes was a dominant champion for a long while, and you have her lose her belt against, a massive underdog, and then you run the rematch back. It's always super interesting and super compelling. Just, off the top of my head, you had Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman. They fought, I think it was at UFC 162. And nobody expected Chris Weidman to win that fight. He knocked out Anderson Silva. And the rematch, the pay-per-view where Anderson Silva broke his leg, I think UFC 168, was one of the biggest pay-per-views of all time. And it was one of the most highly anticipated fights ever, unfortunately, the way it ended. But I think this fight now is more intriguing than it ever was. Just because, going into that first fight at UFC 269, a lot of people thought Amanda Nunes was going to walk all over Julianna Pena. And for whatever reason, that did not happen. And Julianna Pena ends up finishing her rear naked choke. And, it blew everybody's mind. They could not believe it. Some people said it was rigged. And now we get to see, was it a fluke? Because when you have a dominant champion, that is the predominant narrative. Was it a fluke? And, can Julianna Pena do it again? Is she going to be able to do it again? Did Amanda Nunes not take her seriously the first time around? Did she get too complacent? And she thought, you know what? Julianna Pena is not a threat to me. There's no way she beats me. And that's what caused her inevitable demise. And now she lost her belt. We're going to see if she can regain it. They did The Ultimate Fighter. I didn't watch The Ultimate Fighter at all. That does absolutely nothing for me, let alone, Julianna Pena and Amanda Nunes on The Ultimate Fighter. I don't think you could pay me to watch that. But now, you have that extra build-up. You have the fact that you had a dominant champion lose her belt to a massive underdog. And now we're going to get to see if she claims it back. And it's a very interesting narrative. But at the same time, Amanda Nunes is a very good fighter. She's the women's GOAT. Julianna Pena, going to that first fight, and even after watching that first fight, I just really don't think she's all that great. And I don't know, I'm going to do a full breakdown and prediction. I'm going to go back and rewatch that fight. But I just don't know if this fight is main event worthy. I get it. It's an interesting storyline. But at the same time, after seeing the skills that were portrayed in that first fight, I just don't know that this should be a main event of a UFC pay-per-view, but I'm still super interested in this fight because can Amanda Nunes gain her belt back? So moving down the card, we have my favorite fight on the card. We have Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara France for the flyweight title, the interim flyweight title, interim. This is a fight I was not expecting. I thought we were going to get Davison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno for whatever reason. Figueiredo, I guess he's been hanging out with Henry Cejudo too much. He's trying to renegotiate his contract. He's threatening to go up to bantamweight. He's saying he not want to fight Brandon Moreno. So now the UFC said, you know what? We're just going to move on. Next man up. And the next man in line is Kai Kara France. These guys have fought before. A few years back, it was an amazing flyweight fight. And now they are both drastically improved. You look at Kai Kara France, he's coming in on a 3-fight win streak. He brutalized Rogerio Bontorin. Then he brutalized Cody Garbrandt, who was going to move down for a flyweight title shot. Had to pull out of that fight. Then he ended up making his debut against Kai Kara France. And had Cody Garbrandt defeated Kai Kara France, he would have been next in line for a shot. Kai Kara France slept him. And then, some people were saying he deserved a title shot after that. Then he took on Askar Askarov, and he was able to defeat him via decision back in March of this year. So Kai Kara France and Brandon Moreno are the two most deserving. You have Brandon Moreno, who had the draw with Davison Figueiredo. Then they fought in the rematch, and Brandon Moreno was able to stop him via rear naked choke. And then in the trilogy at UFC 270 earlier in this year, January of this year, It was a very close fight, and Deiveson Figueiredo ended up winning the fight. But I really think that fight could have went either way. But it was a high-level fight, and this fight is a very high-level fight. This is my favorite fight on the card. I think, without a doubt, most people would agree with me that this is the best fight on the card. Both guys are elite level. Both guys are very well-rounded. The fight that they had, I think it was back in 2019, was an excellent fight. And now they are vastly improved, and they're going to make adjustments from that first fight. And I'm really curious to see how this fight goes down. And then on top of that, you have the interim flyweight belt. But depending on what goes on with Deiveson Figueiredo, he could find himself stripped, or he could find himself up at bantamweight. And, the interim title holder may become the undisputed title holder. So this is a massive fight. The winner of this fight may fight Deiveson Figueiredo to unify belts. So that's an even bigger fight at flyweight. And it's hard to believe at one point the UFC was going to close down the flyweight division. TJ Dillashaw was injecting EPO and went down to 125 pounds and said, I am going to kill off the flyweight division. Look how good it is now. And I cannot wait for Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara France. Moving down the card, the featured fight on the card, a heavyweight fight. Derrick Lewis versus Sergei Pavlovich. This isn't a fight that I'm particularly hyped for. You have Derrick Lewis, who's won 1 out of his last 3. His last fight was at UFC 271 February this year. He got KO'd by Tai Tuivasa. It was a super exciting fight. Then you have Sergei Pavlovich. He hasn't lost in a while since the Alistair Overeem all the way back in 2018. He's looked pretty good. He's kind of making his way up the division. I don't know how far he'll go in the heavyweight division, but the heavyweight division is not particularly deep. You have both guys who are ranked in the top 15. Derrick Lewis is number 5. Sergei Pavlovich is number 11. And this is Derrick Lewis's fight to lose. I think that, you have Derrick Lewis's power and speed, and that's what he's relied on a little bit too much. But this could be kind of the changing of the guard at heavyweight. I get it, Derrick Lewis has never been a champion. But at the same time, he's been a guy that's constantly been at the top of the division because he has that nuclear power. And it's a good test for Pavlovich. The best competition Pavlovich has faced up until this point was Alistair Overeem, when Alistair Overeem was a little bit better back in 2018, and he lost that fight. So now we're going to see how is he going to do against a nuclear power puncher like Derrick Lewis. I'm not super hyped for this fight because I honestly believe neither one of these guys will ever be champion. Derrick Lewis just fought for the belt last year against Cyril Gane, got outclassed and eventually finished. But still, this should be an exciting fight on the card. Derrick Lewis always delivers for the most part, and you can always expect some tense striking exchanges with that nuclear power from Derrick Lewis. Moving down the card, we have another amazing flyweight matchup. We have Alexandre Pantoja versus Alex Perez. I cannot wait for this fight. Pantoja's number 4. Alex Perez is number 6. Makes perfect sense. Pantoja's coming in on a 2-fight win streak. He defeated Manuel Kopp. He defeated Brandon Royval. Both quality wins. Alex Perez has had, the worst luck that I've ever seen. He's had something like 6 fights canceled on him. He's been supposed to fight Askarov, supposed to fight Matt Schnell, and for whatever reason, they've just never come to fruition, whether it been him injured, other guys injured, and it's just not happened. He has not fought since his title shot against Deiveson Figueiredo back at UFC 255 back in 2020. So I'm happy to see Alex Perez back in action. He's an elite level flyweight fighter. Pantoja's an elite level flyweight fighter. They're both ranked in the top 10. This is an amazing matchup. They're both super well rounded, and whoever wins this fight, depending on what happens with Deiveson Figueiredo, Kai Kara France, Brandon Moreno, that whole title situation, one of these guys is probably going to be next in line. Pantoja has 2 wins over Brandon Moreno. So if Brandon Moreno beats Kai Kara France and Pantoja beats Alex Perez, it's most likely, and Deiveson Figueiredo doesn't come back, it's most likely going to be Moreno versus Pantoja for the flyweight belt next. And I absolutely love this fight. I cannot wait for this fight. Again, it's a travesty that the UFC almost closed down this division. Moving down the card, and the last fight on the main card, we have Magomed Ankalaev versus Anthony Smith. I am very excited for this fight. This is a fight that I thought the UFC would probably do on like a fight night card, a main event of a fight night card. It's a good fight. It's a good light heavyweight fight. It has kind of title implications. I think if Magomed Ankalaev wins this fight, he's potentially a number 1 contender spot. Could fight Yuri, depending on what they do with Yuri. There's some talk of the Glover rematch. There's some talk of the Jan Blachowicz fight. But Magomed Ankalaev will be in a very good spot if he beats Anthony Smith. But you can never count Anthony Smith out. Anthony Smith, I mean, people just are constantly crapping on him, but the guy is a great fighter, and he never quits in any fight. He's never out of it. Look what Glover did to him, and the guy was getting smashed, and he was still there trying to win. It wasn't very successful, but the point is, Anthony Smith doesn't get enough credit for how good he is. He's fought for a title before against John Jones, and if he beats Magomed Ankalaev, who I think a lot of people do not want to fight, Magomed Ankalaev is very well-rounded, has great striking, great power, great wrestling. I think a lot of guys don't want to fight him. If Anthony Smith goes out there and gets a statement win against Magomed Ankalaev, that is going to be massive. They are both ranked in the top 10. Magomed Ankalaev is ranked number 4. Anthony Smith is ranked number 5. Magomed Ankalaev is coming off that kind of boring performance against Thiago Santos before that. Not a great performance against Volkan Ozdemir either, but they were decent wins, and he did what he had to do. And before that, he beat Nikita Krylov, who just got that massive win over Alexander Gustafsson. You have Anthony Smith, who's on a 3-fight winning streak, defeating Devin Clark by triangle, defeating Jimmy Crute by doctor stoppage, and defeated Ryan Spann by rear naked choke. So quality wins, but not the best wins. And now we're going to get to see if Anthony Smith's got a second title run in him. Because if he beats Magomed Ankalaev, he's probably 1 or 2 fights away, depending on how the division plays out, from a title shot. But I also think this fight, a lot of people say, oh, Magomed Ankalaev is boring. I think because Anthony Smith, I think this fight has a chance to be very exciting, and it's super relevant in the division. So the main card as a whole has a lot of quality fights on it. But when I look at a pay-per-view, I look at not only relevance to the division, the quality of the fights, how competitive I think they will be, how exciting I think they will be, but I also look to just sheer spectacle, how good is this fight, how excited am I going to be for this fight. And for me, even though all these fights are something that interests me, and I'm going to try to do full breakdown and prediction videos for every single fight on the main card, it still leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, a lot of these fights kind of belong on a fight night card. Outside of Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara France, which is, again, my favorite fight on the card, I think a lot of these fights aren't that great. Julianna Pena versus Amanda Nunes literally could headline a fight night card. It's not something that I consider, I guess it's high-level MMA, but I mean, that's a stretch to even say, in my opinion. Amanda Nunes, I don't know if she's fallen off a cliff, but Julianna Pena's striking hasn't looked that good. Her grappling's okay. She got submitted by Geraint Durandamine. It's a solid fight. It's a compelling storyline, but at the same time, not crazy excited for the main event. And if I was ordering this, pay-per-view based on the fights that I love, Moreno versus Kai Kara France would be the main event, which I've told you guys multiple times is my favorite fight on the card. So the main event kind of takes a hit. I think it's a little bit more disrespect than it probably deserves. The co-main event, again, amazing flyweight fight. Derrick Lewis versus Sergei Pavlovich. It's going to be exciting, but how relevant is it to the division? Alexandre Pantoja versus Alex Perez is a good fight, but again, this is maybe like a co-main event or a featured fight on a main card of a fight night. And Magomed Ankalaev versus Anthony Smith could be like a main event of a fight night. So all in all, I think this is a quality fight card that just doesn't have that massive main event. Like if you threw a massive main event on top of this card, I think it drastically improves the overall grading. Some cards you'll have a massive main event and the card will be a little bit lacking, and that massive main event kind of makes up for it. But in this card, you can tell the UFC said, okay, we got to put some quality fights underneath it here just because we know the main event ain't that good. So an overall grade for UFC 277, I am going to give it a C-. I debated about giving it a D+, but I think the Moreno fight and the fact that every fight on this main card I'm interested in, and that's not always the case nowadays. Sometimes the UFC has fights on the main card that are like, oh, that really shouldn't be on the main card. Every fight on this main card belongs on the main card. I just wish we had a little bit better main event, a little bit more intriguing main event. And I get it. It still has a decent storyline. But for me, I need something like, even I know a lot of people are going to call me crazy for this. Like Usman Leon Edwards is getting a lot of crap right now. I'm really interested in that main event. Adesanya versus Pereira coming up. Really interested in that main event. That's going to be crazy. Potentially John Jones versus Stipe Miocic, Islam Makhachev, Charles Oliveira. If this had that type of main event, any of those ones I just mentioned, this would probably bump it up to a B+ or a B-, somewhere along those lines. But I'm giving it a C-. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.